Century Writer Podcast. I'm Diane Patterson, and my co-host in the other window without a chyron is
Hannah Steinbach.
Hello. So, and here we are for our second podcast, still having technical difficulties. Thank you, Hangout. Yeah. And we decided that this episode should be possibly a more in-depth introduction to who we are and what we're doing here. So, because there are a lot of writing podcasts out there, what makes ours different? So, I'm going to let Hannah go first about who she is, what she writes, and what her interests are.
All right. Hi, everyone. I think the most important and interesting information about me is that I'm actually German and English is a second language for me. And I'm still writing in English and I love it. And it happened because I fell in love with the English language when I was about 14. And my father gave me a book on Western horsemanship. And during the summer vacations, I took a dictionary to France with us when we went on vacation, and I started reading the book, and the first 3 chapters were on feeding, on tack, and on breeds. And after those 3 chapters, no unknown word ever fazed me again. So, and that gave you a clue for another passion of mine. I love horses. And I've been riding for some time of my life. My last lessons ended up with me breaking my collarbone, and I haven't been back in the saddle yet. I'll find a way eventually.
Yeah.
And in my non-writing life, I'm an EFT practitioner. I'm a therapist and coach, and I will bring this to the table eventually. But today we're going to focus on writing. I also fell in love with dragons and fantasy when I was a little older. And in my exchange year in the US, and I discovered the Pern Dragon Riders, and McCaffrey. And that really introduced me to fantasy. I mean, I had been reading Lord of the Rings, but it wasn't actually billed as fantasy in Germany. It was just an in book and everyone was reading it.
Lord of the Rings is not billed as fantasy?
Back then, I mean, in the 80s. It was just something weird that people read in school. I mean, seriously, everyone. I showed you the books last time. Everyone was reading Lord of the Rings, and it didn't have any labels on it. It was just an interesting story. People loved it, and the Pern books. Yeah, I think they were billed as fantasy. I think they were labeled as such, and I got a couple of other things. I read some books of Thomas Covenant, The Unbeliever, which were kind of hard to read through.
Yeah.
And I didn't continue with that series. And when I came home after my exchange year, I just tried to find English language books, which was really hard in the pre-Amazon days. And so I stocked up on any vacation time we had in England. I came back with tons of books. And finally, Amazon arrived in Germany. And I mean, I was just buying books left and right. You may be able to see some of them back there. I have another bookcase in my bedroom. Anyway, I've been reading all my life, and I love reading. I love diving into different worlds, and I won't be able to say that I've been telling stories all my life either. I have been. My father told us stories at home a couple of times. And I've been writing some of the fan fiction that he started with his stories.
Wow.
Yeah, really, I found it was so cute. I found them. I need to look for them. But I had these tiny little notepads that I was writing on the bus on the way home after school. That was my writing time, 20 minutes every day. And it was really rather silly. But anyway, that was my first writing. And I stopped writing for for years when I got married. But I did have this thing that I would create extra episodes to any series that I loved. So in my head, I was writing Star Trek episodes and MacGyver episodes and that kind of stuff. And then I started role playing. My colleague got me into role playing, so I played a bit of Dungeons and Dragons. And then something really weird happened because I woke up one morning and I had a scene in my mind that wasn't fan fiction. It didn't belong to any series. It didn't belong to any book that I had read. It was about a young knight with a magical sword. And that scene just stayed in my head. And eventually I just sat down and started writing it. And it is rather interesting because I had severe carpal tunnel at that time. But I just had to write. It just had to flow out of my mind into a file. And when I stopped writing for the day, no, I wrote a couple of days and I finally got to the part where the scene actually started. I had to do some pre stuff getting my knight into the scene. And when I finally got there and I realized I had written about 30 pages in my word processor, I thought, whoa, this is something different. And I sent an email to a friend of mine who I knew was writing. She writes excellent, amazing Star Trek fan fiction, and I wish I could send you the files, but they're in German. And I told her what happened, and she totally encouraged me, and I started writing like mad. I mean, that was just such a newfound world, and I was discovering it by writing in it. And for several years, I think 2 or 3 years at least, I wrote like mad. I must have written, I mean, I have it all here, and it's like a series. I used to say it's a trilogy in 5 novels. And I started looking for an agent. And in 2004, I actually found a literary agent that was representing me. And they tried to sell my novels, my first 2 finished novels, as young adult. We call it youth literature here, and it's very much its own genre. There are many publishers specializing only in that area. And it soon turned out that this agent wasn't really good at the job. They couldn't really tell me where they had submitted the manuscript.
Okay, that's like job 1 for the agent. Oh my God.
So when I kept pushing, I finally got an email and they told me, yeah, we submitted it to this, but I never got any rejection answers or anything. They never showed me any material.
Ouch.
And it stopped me from writing. Most of all, it stopped me from writing in English because anything in English they would take to a subsidiary agency and it would cost me even more percentages. So I never wrote a novel in English. What I managed to do is I managed to have in the contract a paragraph about me writing short stories and doing with them whatever I wanted. So the representation was only for novels, not for short stories. I was free to do with short stories whatever I wanted. And so my first ever publication was a German short story in 2009, while I was still being represented by an agent who didn't do anything for me. And I finally asked them to dissolve the contract, and they did so, and I have it in writing. I think it's either 2009 or 2010 when we officially dissolved the contract. And I had practically stopped writing by then. I was still getting some short stories published, but basically my writing had really died down. I had been focusing on getting my EFT certifications and getting my license as a non-medical practitioner of psychotherapy, as it translates. Very bureaucratic German stuff. And I started running my own practice, and writing really fell by the wayside. except something was really missing in my life. And then my life changed completely. I got a divorce. And through all this, I was still keeping my day job. I have a day job in doing statistics in university admin, which is really the most boring job you can imagine. But it pays my bills. I go there in the mornings. I come home at around 1, and I can do my practice stuff, and I can write. And so after I got the divorce and started having some clients, but not really being full-fledged, I decided I wanted to go back and do something with my writing. And in 2013, I self-published my first little book.
Oh, okay.
It was a short story called Sequoia that I could not place anywhere, simply because it doesn't fit any categories. It's not truly fantasy. It's not truly alternate history. It could possibly be alternate history, but it is a little weird because there's this person being teleported through time by falling into a sequoia, which is where it got the title. And it has a whole shamanic bend. It's really not easy to categorize at all. So I self-published that one. And I've been with the same formatting people ever since. And here, you can make a little promotion here. This year I published the first in a whole series, my latest book, Durrell's Journey. And I love the cover. I think it is brilliant. And this is my attempt at being a serious self-publisher, because it's the start of a series. It's a novella series. I have 8 books planned, and if all goes as planned, they will end up being published. 4 of them will end up being published this year, and 4 of them next year.
Oh, great!
And I really hope that's going to get my writing career somewhere.
Wow.
So that's me. Long story short, I'm still trying to get the investment back on my books, but I think investing in covers and formatting is really worth it.
Right.
All right, back to you, Diane.
Okay, so my name is Diane Patterson. I write a series of mystery novels, the Drusilla Thorne Mysteries, and my story has many things in common with Hannah's and some differences. I've been writing most of my life. I think I wrote my first story when I was 3 or 4 years old.
Wow.
About a magic wishing well. I wrote it to my grandfather, who I actually never really knew. But so I've been writing genre a long time. And my first job out of college was as a writer, a technical writer. And then I quit my job at the computer company to go to film school to get an MFA in screenwriting. And that's actually when I started my online journal 20 years ago. And I lived down in Los Angeles, and I had a lot of experiences in that world. Then we moved back up here to Northern California, and for many reasons, screenwriting wasn't where it was going to be for me. So I went back to fiction writing, which, boy, is that, it's a different set of muscles. So it took a while, and I discovered NaNoWriMo. And for the first time, I actually finished one of those novels I was writing on. And that was the first Drusilla Thorne mystery. And I worked on it and cleaned it up, edited it, and said, I'm going to get an editor. I'm going to get an agent. So I did. It took me about 6 weeks. And she sent it out, and it went to about 10 editorial boards. And they said, we can't sell this. Does she have anything else? And this experience was so disheartening that I actually stopped writing for about a year, which apparently is not uncommon. And didn't know precisely what I wanted to do at that point. And a friend said, have you thought about self-publishing? And I said, self-publishing is what you don't want to do. It's the worst thing in the world. And he said, you might want to look into that. It's a little different now. So I looked into it and I went, oh, you're right. And I'm not doing anything with this book anyhow. So I looked into self-publishing and have had a lot of fun with it. And that actually inspired my love of writing again. So I'm doing a lot of writing. In things that I never thought I would either. I know that I'm supposed to be working hard at one project and I have about 3 or 4 going. So, which is not probably an effective use of my time, but I'm having a lot of fun. So yes, I have been writing most of my life. It's what I do full time now. I too would like to make back all of the money that I've spent on covers, but that's okay. I'm not in it for that, really. I do it because I enjoy it. There's no other reason to do it, I think. Yeah. Which will be something that I would like to discuss at some point in one of our podcasts, because boy, are there a lot of different writer mentalities out there. And I think, actually for me, the biggest thing about this podcast is to talk about mindset. There are a lot of podcasts out there that talk about marketing. There are a lot of podcasts that talk about what this writer is doing or that writer is doing. And it's always the story of, well, I decided to write a best-selling series, so I sat down and 3 weeks later had this series on #1 on Amazon. And I'm like, really? You just sat down and did that? What kind of mindset leads you to do that? What kind of mindset leads you to go back when it's tough? What sort of techniques can we use to really increase our optimism, our output, our sense of what's possible? So that's really what inspired me to want to do this podcast. Now, what actually happened was a couple of months ago, what really inspired this podcast, here it is, was I'm in a marketing group teaching us about marketing and business and stuff. And a woman in this group said that she was doing this technique and she was looking for people to work with. So I said, okay, I'll try it. And so it was doing EFT, and wanted to work on my resistance to writing, because it seemed like every day I would start up the computer and I would go, oh, okay, now I have to write. Okay, type. Okay, now I have to write. So we did the EFT, and during the session, I literally could feel differences happening inside my chest. Now, I'm a certified hypnotherapist in addition to all of my other degrees, and I've never been able to get the same effect myself. It was fantastic, but maybe it was just a one session thing. And the day after we had the session, my family and I flew to Hawaii for a vacation, and we rented a little condo, and it was Hawaii. Like, it was gorgeous. It was the beach. It was fun. And 5 out of the 7 mornings we were there, I woke up early, I'd make a pot of coffee, and I went out on the lanai looking out at the palm trees, and I wrote. And I said, what is going on here? I did one session with this woman, and I am writing every morning in Hawaii when I should be sleeping in or something. And I said, that's really amazing. Now, of course, the person that I did the session with was none other than. So that is, and so we have been talking about this ever since. And in fact, I need to do another session with you at some point, because if I start at 9 in the morning, I work straight through until 1 p.m. I get amazing quantities of stuff done. I have the best day ever. If I get started at 9:30, that's it, game over. I'm not going to get jacked on that day. So there's clearly something else going on there. But the difference in mindset between before doing that EFT session and after was so remarkable that I said, I bet there's other things out there too that people ought to know about. I'm also big into productivity, whatever it takes to organize your life, to increase your productivity. I love that stuff. And of course, there's plenty of stuff that we can talk about with marketing, with the business. I think too many people, myself included, get really distracted by that. Like, oh, I should be writing billionaire romances. And I'm like, I don't even want to read them. Why would I want to write them? I don't even want to read them. So, what are we doing here? That's my answer for it. What is yours?
Oh, I love that you brought up mindset, because I completely believe that mindset is so crucial to whatever you do. And I think we talked about this in the last podcast just a little bit, about writing what you love and writing what you enjoy and where you can pour your heart and blood in. And I think that is also crucial, and to give yourself permission to write exactly that. It took me 10 years to want to write dragons. I mean, I love dragons. It's just the whole concept of that kind of, well, I don't even want to call them beasts, because in my stories, dragons are intelligent beings.
Yeah.
But it took me 10 years to overcome this idea of how can I do it and even pretend to be as good as Anne McCaffrey, for example. Who, I mean, I think she won any prize that's there for fantasy, science fiction, whatever. And now I'm doing it and I'm enjoying it tremendously. But it, like I said, it took me years and years of writing, and I never really dared to go into that place of dragons. And I don't know what changed, but something happened, and I started to like the idea. And I mean, what happened was partly that I learned dragon stuff sells.
Right.
But there's a twist. My stories are not just about dragons. I always have undercurrents in my stories about topics that interest me, and so it's about how dragons are being treated, and it's sort of a parallel about discrimination, because the majority doesn't treat dragons very well. They pretend they're horses with wings, basically.
Right.
And they're not. So there are a few people who recognize that these are intelligent beings and they could be full partners, and it would be really useful to take advantage of their intelligence rather than suppress it. It has some parallels with women's liberation and feminism as well. And I like to put that into my stories as an undercurrent, so people can see the parallels if they want to, and if they don't want to, well, they have a nice adventure story.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it so fun for me to write the stories, and that's where I put my heart blood in, because those are passions of mine. And getting horses right in fantasy is another one.
Yeah.
That's another topic.
Now, you also do creativity coaching, right?
Some. I haven't really figured out exactly what all that is going to be. I mean, I love coaching writers, because I think being a writer, I'm intimately familiar with all the blocks and challenges and difficulties being a writer brings with it. But to be honest, I'm still in the process of really creating that that part of my business. It's always a hard path until you have the details down. I think it's the same with creating stories. It takes a while to have, well, let's just call it a plot. It takes a while to really work out the plot and to be clear where you're going. And I think the same goes for businesses. that you really need to start working on the guidelines, on the signposts, and then figure out what exactly is going to happen between those plot points. And I have to admit, I'm in that situation with my business as well. It kind of surprises me that I started to think along these lines. I have never done that before.
Oh.
So this is a stream of consciousness
Well,
stuff.
I find running my writing business hard enough. I can't even imagine adding on other businesses. Maybe if I get more organized and really use those productivity tools.
Well, I don't think I'm really very organized. It's just that I'm learning to follow my passions, and that life is a lot more fun if you do that.
Yeah, I find that's really, I've gotten the advice from a number of different people now that I need to back away from some online writers communities, because it is all about the tactics and even the strategy of what am I going to do now with my business.
Yeah.
And right for the moment, I need to concentrate more on, well, I don't know, what do I want to do? What interests me, you know? I want to get my writing done, but it's not all about the market for me. And I personally have to stay away from a lot of that stuff where I start going, oh, you know, BookBub changed what they're looking for in a book. Now what do I do? It's crazy making. Stay away from the crazy makers. That's this week's tip.
I think a good idea is to still focus on writing what you love. I mean, not just writing what you know, but writing what you love and learn what you need to know about that. And adapt your marketing to your writing and not the other way around. I really think that is important.
Yeah.
Because BookBub certainly is not the only way of email marketing books. And
no, but it's the best one at the moment. There's nothing in its class.
It is true, and I have something planned for my stuff, and I will report. And
Good.
It's not BookBub.
I finally got a BookBub on December 31st and started 2015 with the #1 book in the Amazon free store. That's the power of BookBub.
That's awesome.
I've been in the top 30 before on using other advertising, but there's no question BookBub is the 800-pound gorilla.
Absolutely.
But we can discuss that another week too.
It is. So I really think mindset is choose what you write, focus on that, figure out any resistance. That's my coach talking again. Figure out where is the resistance. If you write and you have resistance just opening the file, that's something. If you have resistance in a certain scene, that's something else entirely. So it really pays to watch your emotions. Emotions are guides. They're not good or bad. They exist, and they're basically there to tell us that there's something going on. And if you feel good, that's a sign that things are good. And if you feel angry or resistant or whatever, it means there's something going on that's bothering you. And it's really worth it looking into that, honing in on it, and then see if you can change anything about that. So I'm all about little tweaks, and of course I'm about the EFT tapping, but that's again a topic for some other session. But first of all, just really be aware of which parts of the writing make you feel resistance. Where is it? And it could be anything. It could be a character that's misbehaving, that you still haven't figured out why he or she is doing what they are doing. It could be that your inner writing guide is telling you that the plot has a huge hole and you need to look at it. It could be any of that. Just trust your feelings, trust your intuition about these things. Because I believe most writers, I said that last time too, I believe storytelling is a deeply human ability, and we all have it, or most of us have it, and have a sense for it. And to listen to that intuition and to listen to that sense is incredibly important. that's what I think about writing.
Okay. And I've completely lost what I was about to say. Yeah, no, I know. And I think that a lot of people, because whenever there is a gold rush, you get people rushing in to capitalize on it without really knowing why they're doing it other than the money. And there will always be someone who can ace the game better than you can. There's people I know who literally produce a new erotica story every 2 to 3 days because of the money. Now, I can't imagine anything that I'd rather less do. Now, if it's the difference between feeding my family and not, it's probably amazing how much my attitude will change. But there are people out there who want it worse than other people do and will do that. So ask yourself why you're doing it. I actually know a woman who has written 60 novels who thinks that you should not depend on writing to make money. 60 novels. She counsels people, if it's about the money, have a day job. And she's self-published and she's published with major publishers.
Mm-hmm. So she has it made as a writer,
right,
in conventional terms, and she still tells people don't rely on that income.
And you wouldn't probably recognize her name if I said it. She's published 60 books.
Yeah. Well, they might not be all under the same name.
They are, in fact.
Oh.
Interestingly enough. I said you don't use different pen names, and that's something I want to get into too, because I've never thought about using a pen name until recently when I wrote something and I said, this doesn't really fit with the whole mystery thing that I've been doing. Should I create a pen name for it? Or and that's it's funny, her name is Denise Agnew, by the way, and she said, yeah, everyone says you have to, there we are, the mindset again, you have to do such and so. No, you don't.
Well, how do you as well reveal, because Hannah Steenbock is in fact a pen name.
Yeah.
I chose that long ago, and I see myself using another pen name if I ever write something that is completely out of what I usually do.
Right.
So if I ever decide to completely leave the big realm of speculative fiction, and I did write a historical thriller that I used my pen name for. So I mean, I really take this as a broad umbrella. So anything that's basically speculative, fantasy, science fiction, that historical thriller is leaning in the direction of fantasy. It doesn't have anything fantastic in there, but it plays with belief systems.
Right.
So it fit my pen name. But if I were to say write erotica, I would definitely choose another pen name.
Yeah.
So that's actually another topic.
Yeah.
But still, it's I think it's mindset, and I just today read a new blog post by Chris Rush that the gold rush is over in e-publishing, in e-books and self-publishing, and that people need to adapt, and that the new focus is on quality, and which I thought was really interesting. And I think it's always about having a mindset that we can adapt our marketing. We can write what we want to write, but we need to adapt the marketing to the changing of the industry. And now in 2015, we have so many more books coming in. I mean, Amazon makes it so easy. CreateSpace makes it so easy. Even iBooks is growing. So
they're really putting on the hard sell.
From a really tiny market percentages, but they're gaining. And so I think still write what you love, write what you know, but start thinking about your marketing, and the sun is going away. So yeah, I think it's a mindset thing. If you believe you will be killed by the change, and you will be hit by the KU apocalypse,
yes,
then you will be. And if you believe that you can be nimble enough and change your marketing and still at least recover costs, or create a career out of it, then you will. It's that part is up in the mind.
yes. And also, what do you do to just get started in the morning? Is it just, this is what I do, it's 9 o'clock, I write now? How do you keep going with your own parade when you're the only one in it? That's actually how I phrased it to the marketing group that we work with. When you're getting started with something, whether it's your own business, whether it's your writing career, whatever you're doing, there's the initial rush of excitement, like, woohoo, this is exciting. And then you're like, oh, this is a very hard slog. Maybe I'll go watch Netflix. How do you find that inner clarity on what you're doing?
Well, there are days when I don't find it. I mean, I'm ready to admit that. What really, really helps me is having an accountability buddy. I love that concept. It is having one person, or possibly more, or a group, where you actually state your goals at the beginning of the week, or whenever you meet. My buddy and we meet on Thursdays right now.
Yeah.
So we have this, usually a quick check-in. It's usually just half an hour, 20 minutes, half an hour, where we talk about the goals we had and whether we reached them and why not. And we talk about the goals you want to reach for the next week. And one thing that I might start to add to that is actually having monthly goals, or possibly quarterly goals.
Right.
Because some of our, especially of the writing projects, do take more time than a week. I mean, I keep telling.
Oh, definitely. Oh, wow, yeah.
So that makes sense to start adding a monthly and quarterly goals. But that's a good way of doing it. I don't have an AB for my writing right now, which is a little, well, I'm starting to do that. But it's not yet a habit. So
yeah,
that is one thing to really improve, to have a good accountability buddy. That's actually something we do in our coaching group. And it really, really helps. And there's some simple tricks. It's like, when you stop writing, don't stop writing when things peter out, but stop writing when you still know how the scene is going to continue. So you don't have to think about what's going to happen next in the next morning.
Yeah, except the thing that always happens for me is I get really excited and I'm writing the scene. I'm like, oh my God, this is just fabulous. And then the next morning I start and go, wait, I thought I knew how this was going to go. I don't think it goes that way. Oh no.
Oh, okay. Well, see that armchair behind me? That's my thinking chair. And when that happens, I just curl up there, and I read through the scene the way I have it, and if I still can't make it move, sometimes I force myself to write a sentence or two, and then it starts to flow. And sometimes I just say, okay, my writing crew is telling me there's something going on, and I curl up there and I think about it. And usually I find a solution. But I've had months when I didn't write anything, so I know I don't have the perfect solution either.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think we could actually create a topic out of that, sort of get into your writing flow every morning. I think it has to do with habit as well.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, why don't we just say that will be our topic for next week?
We can do that, yes. And
how to get into your writing flow, and then we can even advertise.
Yes, How to get into your writing flow.
How to get into your writing flow every morning.
And I can do a little live tapping, which any listener can tap along to. Unless you're in the car, don't do that. But if you're just watching the video, you can tap along with what I'm doing and saying. Just, I mean, I will do this weird stuff. I will tap places on my face, but
I'm actually wondering if EFT hasn't taken off more because you have to touch your face, and women are trained not to touch their face.
I never
because you will ruin your makeup, and I don't really wear much makeup, so it's not a big deal for me.
I don't either. I mean, I know how to put it on. I have some stuff. I never do it.
Yeah. No, there was, in fact, an acting class that I was taking at USC with Nina Foch, who was a character. And we were doing a scene from Reality Bites, the Ben Stiller, Winona Ryder movie. And there was something in the scene where Winona Ryder had to touch her face. And Nina Foch said, "Oh, this was clearly written by someone under the age of 30 because you never touch your face if you're wearing makeup." She had very strong opinions on things. But yeah, no, I find myself wondering if EFT tapping hasn't taken off because of that, because you have to touch things.
Question, but yes, because the acupuncture points are on your face. And while you can do tapping in your mind, it's not easy for anyone who hasn't learned it.
Right.
So it takes a bit of experience before you can actually visualize it.
Right.
So that's interesting.
So yes, if you've joined us for this podcast, we're going to have strange and unusual things like EFT tapping and other things that we do to get the writing flow going in the morning. Next week on the 21st Century Writer podcast, how do you get it going in the morning or whenever you sit down to write? I'm a morning person, so.
I'm too.
Yes.
So.
My name is Diane Patterson.
And I'm Hannah Steinbach.
And we were going to fix Hannah's Chiron problem, come hell or high water. Thanks very much, and see you next week.
Bye, folks.
Bye.